أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وجاءت سكرة الموت بالحق ذلك ما كنت منه تحيد ونفخ في الصور ذلك يوم الوعيد وجاءت كل نفس معها سائق وشهيد لقد كنت في غفلة من هذا فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. A human being lives in this life for an average of 25,000 days. And after that, we have to depart and we have to leave, and we are left with no choice. Because death is the completion of our human cycle in this life. Plato, the philosopher, says, people fear death because they fear the unknown. They don't know what happens to them after death. But if they know that death represents their progression, the natural progression of their life. It's like a graduation from a school. When we go to a school for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, after that we have to leave. We have to graduate. We don't stay in the school forever. We must leave. It's the same story with this life. We must leave. Every single day, millions of people leave this life. Millions of people come into this life. Every second, 2 people die in this world. 2 people die and 4 people are born. Every second. Every day, 385 people are born in this world. Every year, 140 million people are born in this world. And those who come, they need a space. So we have to vacate our space for them. We have to leave in order for them to come and fill these spaces. This life is like a giant transit lounge. Have you seen the airports, the transit lounges at the airports, at Schiphol Airport here in Amsterdam? Have you watched the airport? Millions of people come, arrive, and millions of people leave from these airports. But nobody stays there. Nobody stays at the airport. Nobody lives at the airport. They just pass through the airport. Some of them, it takes them 1 hour, some of them 2 hours, some of them 3 hours, some of them maybe 5 or 6 hours, because they are transiting. But they don't stay there. A group of people arrive, another group is leaving. This is the story of this life. This is the reality of this life. It's a huge transit lounge. We are here for a number of days. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ عَدَدُ أَيَّامٍ فَكُلُّ يَوْمٍ يَمْضِي فِيكَ يَمْضِي بِبَعْضِكَ. Every day that passes by, you are composed of a number of days, not a number of years, a number of days. Every day that passes by is going to dismantle part of you, takes away part of you. فَكُلُّ يَوْمٍ يَمْضِي, every day that passes by, يَمْضِي بِبَعْضِكَ, is going to take part of you with him until we are completely dismantled. And we have to be prepared for this journey. There are almost 2,000 verses in our holy book, the Holy Quran. 2,000 verses that address the subject of the hereafter, of death, the grave, the day of judgment, the hellfire, the paradise. 2,000. It's a huge number, almost 1/3 of the book. 1/3 of our Quran speaks about the next life, the hereafter. Because it's a very serious subject. When death is mentioned, we tremble out of fear. But in fact, we soon forget. We don't take death serious. Imam Ali alayhi salam says to his son, Bunayya Hassan, أكثر من ذكر الموت. I'm advising you, I'm reminding you that you always, frequently remind yourself of death. أكثر من ذكر الموت حتى يأتيك وقد أخذت منه حذرك وشددت له أزرك. So when death arrives, and sometimes arrives without a notice, without a warning, without any warning. Have you seen some young people who die? Do you have this in your community? I have them in my community. Every week, someone goes to bed at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, 29. They go to bed, they don't wake up in the morning. They don't wake without warning. The mother says he was perfectly okay last night. He came back home, he was okay. He went into his room, he didn't wake up in the morning. It comes without warning. حتى يأتيك وقد أخذت منه حذرك وشددت له أزرك. One of the prophets of God, when his time of departure arrived, the angel of death came to take his soul off. He said, I'm not worried about death, but God, you should have told me before. You should have sent me a warning before so I get prepared for today. God said to him, I warned you 40 years ago. I sent you a message 40 years ago. He said, where is the message? I didn't get it. He said, with the first gray hair in your beard, the first white or gray hair, that was a message for you, that the departure time is arriving soon. The departure time is arriving soon. You have to be prepared. We are not meant tonight to depress you, neither to frighten you. The reason why we are having this subject and this session, to be prepared, to be ready. حتى يأتيك وقد أخذت منه حذرك. So once death comes, you are ready for departure. You are not like those who say, حتى إذا حضر أحدهم الموت قال رب ارجعون لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت. The sinners are going to say, we are not ready, so give me one day, one more week. لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت. Maybe I can fix the damage that I created. I hurt many people. I took the money from people without any right. I committed many sins, many violations against my neighbors, against my parents, against my friends in the society. So give me some time, please. Don't take my soul now. Give me one more week. لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت. So I can fix the damage that I caused. The answer is going to come. Who knows the answer? لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت. What is the continuation of the verse? كلا. The continuation of the verse, the answer comes from God. كلا, nay. Absolutely no. We are not going to give him not even one more hour, not even one more second. كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها ومن ورائهم برزخ إلى يوم يبعثون. This is wishful thinking. We are not going to delay him, not even 1 hour. Angel of death comes on time, on schedule, always. And he's busy. He's busy. He's moving from one house into another, from one hospital into another, from one neighborhood into another, from one country into another country. He's busy. كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها. This is serious. This is not a fairy tale, my friends. These are not movies. This is the reality of this life. Death is striking every single day. At our community, at other communities, at our neighbors, and sometimes it will be our turn. There is no exception. God says to Prophet Muhammad, even you're going to die. إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ. No exception. The most beloved servant of God, the most beloved human being on earth is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And God says to him, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ. You are dying. Not you will die, no. Because death comes so soon, so fast, so God did not use will for the future. No, he said for the present, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ. It means you are dying. You are dying. Soon. You are dying soon. إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ. ثُمَّ إِنَّكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ تُبْعَثُونَ. In another verse, God says to the Prophet, وَمَا جَعَلْنَا لِبَشَرٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ الْخُلْدِ أَفَإِن مِتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ. We have never attributed eternity. We have never given eternity, khulud, eternity, to anyone before you. So if you die, if you, the most beloved to God, if you're going to die, they think they're going to survive death? Nobody is going to survive death. There is no exception. أَفَإِن مِتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every human soul is going to taste death, sooner or later. This life is two-way tickets. The inbound and the outbound. We came into this life, we used one portion of our ticket, and we are holding to the second portion. We are holding to the second portion, and we have to use it. One, we really don't know. Definitely we ask God to prolong our lives with happiness, with the prosperity. Sometimes God listens, sometimes He doesn't listen. It's up to Him. We don't decide this matter. We don't decide how many years we live. It's up to Him. وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ مَاذَا تَكْسِبُ غَدًا وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِأَيِّ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ. We don't know what will happen today when we leave here. What will happen tomorrow? What will happen next week, next month? We don't know. Many people left their homes in the morning. They did not return in the evening. Many people came back home in the evening. They did not leave the home in the morning. Their journey was terminated. So 2,000 verses in the Quran. They keep reminding us. Every page, open almost every page of this book, there is somewhere, either on the right side, left side, the upper side, the lower side, there is a reference to the Day of Judgment. There is a reference to death, because it's a reality. It's a reality. But we don't take it serious. We think death is reserved for others, not for us, because I'm healthy, I'm happy, I have money, I have home, I have job, I have family. Therefore, Israel is not going to get close to me. He's only targeting others, not me. This is not right. This is an illusion. We have to be prepared. Yes, you may live very happy and you work very serious. You go to school, you go to your office, you build a family, you enjoy your life, but at the same time, your passport is in your hand. You carry the passport and the boarding pass in your hand. So any moment the angel of death arrives, you are ready. You are ready for that departure. And this is the meaning of the hadith of Imam Al-Hasan alayhi salatu wassalam. اعمل لدنياك كأنك تعيش أبدا وَاعْمَلْ لِآخِرَتِكَ كَأَنَّكَ تَمُوتُ غَدًا. You may work even if you are 70, 80, 90 years old. Work for this dunya, for the success of this dunya, because this life is a life of labor and work and production. We have to produce, we have to work, we have to give, we have to contribute. So you must work. Don't sit there and say, I'm waiting for Israel to arrive. I'm not going to go to school tomorrow because there is no point. Anyways, I'm dying. Why should I go to school? Why should I go to my office? Why should I go to my shop? Why should I get married? Why should I have kids? Because I'm dying. No, you shouldn't say this. You should do all these things, work for this dunya, because you are working for your akhirah. Ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah. This life, lower life, is the plantation, a farm for the next one. And then at the same time, excuse me, وَأْمَلْ لِآخِرَتِكَ كَأَنَّكَ تَمُوتُ غَدًا. While you are in the midst of your enthusiasm, your energy, your work, your engagement with people, you have to be prepared to leave this life. How do you prepare for that? How do you prepare? When you don't wrong people. When you don't abuse people around you. When you don't abuse anyone, be it a family member, be it stranger, be it a neighbor, be it someone that you know, someone that you don't know. You don't hurt them. You don't abuse them. Al-Muslimu, they came to the Prophet, they said, Ya Rasulullah, who is the true Muslim? He said, Al-Muslimu man salima an-nasu min lisanihi wa yadihi. All people who live around that person, that individual, they feel safe because that person is not going to hurt them. The day we reach this point, that people around us, all people, strangers, even enemies, we don't hurt them. Even enemies, they live next to us, they feel safe. That day we become real Muslims. Islam is not just a praying and fasting, and these things are fasad, a fasad. These things are an exterior, but the interior of faith, the core of faith, is when people feel safe around us. We don't hurt anyone. This is how we get prepared for our final departure. There are two types of rights upon us. حقوق الله وحقوق الناس. The rights of God and the rights of the people upon us. حقوق Allah is the prayers. God wants me to pray 5 times a day, to fast the month of Ramadan, to pay the charity, to go to Hajj if I can make it, if I am financially able. But there are more important rights, the rights of the people upon me. That when I deal with people, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا, I deal kindly, in an honorable way. I don't abuse anyone. Sometimes we don't abuse with our hands, with our guns. We don't have guns, but sometimes we have worse than a gun. What is worse than a gun, my friends? A sharp tongue is worse than a gun. It kills, it destroys. Sometimes the wounds of a gun, you go to the hospital, they put a bandage, you recover after a few months, after a few weeks. But the sharp tongue that attacks and backbites and spread rumors and gossips, gossip is very damaging. The hadith says, an-nammam, nammam means from namima, the person who enjoys gossiping, backbiting people. أول من يدخل إلى نار جهنم. If God does not forgive him, he's a first-class seat in Jahannam. They give him first-class seat. At KLM, you know, first-class seat. So he's the first one who's going to board into the hellfire. And if God forgives him, if God إذا غفر الله له, if God forgives him, آخر من يدخل إلى الجنة. They put him on a waiting list. The last person to make it to paradise, if God forgives him. Why? Because gossiping is very damaging. ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه. Don't gossip. If you want to mention people, mention the good things about them. The good things, not the bad things. We should not mention the bad things because we are full of bad. We are full of mistakes. We are full of wrongs and deficiencies. So we should not attack others. This is how we prepare for death. Some people prepare for death by preparing the coffin. They go to Najaf and Karbala, they buy, or Qom, they buy a coffin with Du'a ul-Jawshan, with whatever, which is good. But this is not the real preparation. The real preparation when I control my tongue, so I don't hurt anyone. So people do not come and stand before God يوم يقوم الناس لرب العالمين and say, Ilahi, Moustafa was lying against me. He was accusing me. He was backbiting me. He was attacking me. He was slandering me. This is how we prepare for death. Control your tongue. Control your behavior. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. Revere God and fear God and have reverence for God. In everything you say and in everything you do, consider that God is watching, God is monitoring, God is listening, God is seeing, God is counting. Anything we say, there are two angels that are going to record. Record everything we do and everything we say. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. Two angels standing on your shoulder and writing everything you say. ما يلفظ من قول. Any utterance, whether good or bad, it's recorded. And it is preserved and saved for you. And you're going to see it right before your eyes on a big screen on the day of judgment. وَكُلَّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ وَنُخْرِجُ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ كِتَابًا يَلْقَاهُ مَنْشُورًا اقْرَأْ كِتَابَكَ كَفَى بِنَفْسِكَ الْيَوْمَ عَلَيْكَ حَسِيبًا. You're going to see your file right before your eyes. Everything you did, everything you said, all your deeds, all your behavior is going to be displayed right before your eyes. اقرأ كتابك. Look at what you did. كفى بنفسك اليوم. You are the judge over yourself. You have to be the judge. By looking at what you did, you're going to judge yourself. من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا. We have to be prepared. These are serious stories. These are not fairy tales or fictions or movies. And we're going to see that. Soon we're going to see. God says at the time of death, وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ. And I'm going to say why God uses the term sakra. Sakra means intoxication. Because the pain of death, the pain where the soul is exiting the body, it will create so much pain. And that pain is going to result in sakra, the stupor of death, the intoxication of death. وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنْتَ مِنْهُ تَحِيدٌ. We run away from death. We try to keep ourselves always safe, intact. But death is going to follow us until the moment arrives. When the moment arrives, there is no more protection. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Kafa bil ajali harisa. The death itself is going to protect you, is going to be your bodyguard until the moment that God has prescribed that you have to leave. Until that moment arrives, the death itself is not going to protect you anymore. When death does not protect you, you're going to die. Imagine death itself protects you 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, until God says today he has to leave. Then death is not going to protect you anymore. ذلك ما كنت منه تحيد ونفخ في الصور ذلك يوم الوعيد وجاءت كل نفس معها سائق وشهيد لقد كنت في غفلة من هذا فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد. Philosophers, Muslim philosophers, this is how they define death. What is death? They say death simply means, it means the lifting up of the veil from your eyes. فكشفنا عنك غطاءك. Meaning, you are asleep and you wake up. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, الناس نيام إذا ماتوا انتبهوا. We are in a deep sleep now. Though we are moving and we are eating and we are laughing and we are socializing and we are running and we are exercising, but we are asleep. الناس نيام. Indeed, they are asleep. Once they die, they wake up. إذا ماتوا انتبهوا. And it's taken from the Quran. This hadith is being extracted from the Quran. فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد. We don't see the truth today. We don't see the reality. We don't see the angels. We don't see the paradise. We don't see the hellfire. But we're going to see them soon. Soon we're going to see them. When the veil is being lifted away, فَكَشَفْنَا كَشْفُ الْغِطَاءِ. When they remove the veil from your eyes, you're going to see these things. The Prophet says, the grave is very terrifying. مَا رَأَيْتُ مَنْظَرًا فَضِيعًا إِلَّا وَالْقَبْرُ أَفْضَعُ مِنْهُ. Whenever I look at something terrible, I remember that the grave is more terrifying than it. The Prophet says the grave is the most terrifying experience. The Prophet himself says. Don't look at the grave as a small hole. We are taking the dead body and burying him in this small hole and he rests in peace, as they say. He rests in peace. Who said he rests in peace? Who said? Do you know what is happening to him? Do you know what is happening to the dead person? The Prophet says, إِذَا وُضِعَ الْمَيِّتُ بَيْنَ يَدَيِ الْغَاسِلِ كَلَّمَ الْغَاسِلَ بِكَلَامٍ لَوْ سَمِعَهُ مَا غَسَّلَ مَيِّتًا بَعْدَهَا أَبَدًا. If a dead person is being put on that platform to be washed before burial, he's going to speak to the person who's performing the ghusl, the washing. And if that person is able to listen and to hear, he would stop washing bodies. He will be terrified. He tells him, أيها الغاسل رفقا بي فوالله ما خرجت الروح من عضو من أعضاء بدني إلا وانفصل ذلك العضو مني. I have experienced enormous pain during the process of death. Whenever the soul was leaving any limb, any part of my body, as if they were severing and cutting that part away from me. So painful. So be careful with me when you wash my body. Be careful. I have sustained a lot of pain. And this is just before the burial and after the burial. If a believer, if he's a good believer, the earth is going to tell him, كنت تمشي على ظهري وأنا أحبك فستنظر ماذا أفعل بك. And if he's a non-believer, if he's a stubborn if he's a sinner, if he's an arrogant, if he spent his life destroying people's lives, destroying his society, destroying his family, destroying his country, then the earth is going to tell him, كنت تمشي على ظهري وأنا أبغضك والآن حللت في بطني فستعلم صنعي بك. You've been walking above me and I hated you. Now you are in my womb. You will see what I'm going to do with you. If he's a believer, the grave is going, a window is going to be opened from his head side. A window, a canal that leads to paradise. And he receives the beautiful smell of paradise. يدخل عليه روحها ونعيمها إلى يوم القيامة. If he is a sinner, a criminal, another window is going to be opened from his head side, leading, a canal leading to hellfire. يدخل عليه لهيبها وجحيمها إلى يوم القيامة. He's going to suffer from the flames of the fire while he's in the grave. This is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then the Prophet said, القبر إما روضة من رياض الجنة أو حفرة من حفر النيران. It's one of two. Our abode, our grave is either is going to be a garden of paradise or a pit full of the hellfire. It depends on our deeds here in this life. This is before the resurrection, before we stand before God, before we are sent to paradise or to the hellfire. This is in the grave. This is an appetizer. Have you seen appetizer before the main meal? They bring you some appetizers. This is the appetizer. We have to be prepared. Now, do we feel after death? Do we feel? Do we see? Do we hear? The Prophet says yes. The Prophet says, إِنَّ الْمَيِّتَ لَيَسْمَعُ خَفْقَ النَّعَالِ عَلَى قَبْرِهِ. People are walking above his grave and he can hear the tapping of the footwear on his grave. People who are walking above. After the battle of Badr, between the Muslims and the polytheists, when some of the polytheists were killed, some of those arrogant leaders of Quraysh, they were killed. Talha, Shayba, and Al-Walid, and those, and their cronies. The Prophet stood upon their bodies in the battlefield and he started calling them by their names. Ya Talha, Ya Shayba, Ya Walid. أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ وَعْدَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. Have you seen what God had promised you? Did you see it now? Do you see it now? Some of the companions, they came to the Prophet, they said, Ya Rasulullah, أَتُكَلِّمُ أَجْسَادًا مَيِّتًا. Are you talking to dead? Why you are talking to dead? The Prophet said, وَاللَّهِ مَا أَنْتُمْ بِأَسْمَعَ مِنْهُمْ وَلَوْ أُذِنَ لَهُمْ لَأَجَابُوا. You don't have better hearing than them. If God gives them permission, they will answer. They will say, yes, we have seen what God has promised us. We are seeing the punishment now. So yes, we see and we hear in the grave. We see and we hear. And therefore we have to prepare that house. Have you read this supplication during the month of Ramadan? دعاء أبي حمزة الثمالي أبكي لظلمة قبري أبكي لضيق لحدي أبكي لسؤال منكر ونكير إياي أبكي لخروجي من قبري عريانا ذليلا حاملا ثقلي على ظهري. This is serious. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, I'm crying, I am shedding tears for the darkness, for the solitude of my grave when they put me down and they leave me. My family, my loved ones, my kids, my neighbors, my friends, they come to my funeral. Once they put me there, they pour the dirt on me, they leave me. They go back home. You know, my friends, sometimes when I go for a burial, to a cemetery for a burial, while they are burying their father or their mother or their loved ones, people are chatting and laughing and smiling and cracking jokes. He's still not buried. He's still not buried. People forget. This is our nature. We forget. Who's going to care about us? Nobody. We have to care about ourselves. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, I cry for myself. I'm not expecting people to cry for me. I have to cry for myself. I have to cry for my future, for my grave, for my death. لِسُؤَالِ مُنْكَرٍ وَنَكِيرٍ. The interrogation that I'm going to experience. These are teachings for us. The Imam is infallible, of course. He doesn't commit any sin, but these are teachings. These are guidance for us. These are reminders for us. We have to be prepared for these moments. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, إِنَّ أَشَدَّ السَّاعَاتِ عَلَى ابْنِ آدَمَ ثَلَاث. The most distressful moments in the life of a human being are three. These 3 hours that are the most distressful in your life. Number 1, ساعة يشاهد فيها ملك الموت. The moment we see the face of the angel of death approaching us. Very distressful, very frightening. We know we are leaving. Even if we call the doctor, the hospital, the ambulance, the lawyer, the police, the prime minister, the king, nobody's going to help us. كلا إذا بلغت التراقي. God says, nay, when it reaches the throat, taraqi, turqwa is this. This is the area called turqwa here. When the soul reaches here, they're going to get panic and they call the doctor, the ambulance, bring him someone, bring him a nurse, call the doctor. كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق. من راق means who's going to save his life. I was flying two days ago from America to Amsterdam. All of a sudden there was a call on the airplane. Do we have a doctor on board because someone is suffering, having heart attack? وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق. It's too late. Too late. The doctor cannot do anything. The doctor cannot help himself. He can help you. فلولا إن كنتم غير مدينين ترجعونها إن كنتم صادقين. God says, if you cannot escape death, if you can escape death, you can save him. But if you as a doctor, as a nurse, as a father, as a husband, you cannot save yourself because you're going to die too. Therefore, you cannot save anyone. We have to be prepared. So, sakratul maut. And then after that, wahshatul qabr. The squeezing, asratul qabr, dhaghtatul qabr. You know how many narrations we have by the Prophet and the Imams that speak about the squeezing of the grave. Squeezing. The grave squeezes the dead person. One of the great companions of the Prophet by the name of Sa'd ibn Ma'ad. Great companion. He was wounded during the battle of Uhud. And he was brought from Uhud to the mosque of the Prophet. They erected a tent for him. And the Prophet himself was nursing him. The Prophet himself became his nurse. He was taking care of him, this man Sa'd. But unfortunately Sa'd died. And the entire community of Medina, they were walking in his procession. They saw the Prophet walking on his toes. They said, Ya Rasulullah, why do you walk on your toes? He said, because of the crowd. It's too crowded. Because the angels are walking in this procession. The angels are walking in the procession of Sa'd. He was very lucky. So when the Prophet was burying him, the Prophet himself went down to his grave. He was burying him. His mother was standing and she said, Hani'an ya Sa'd, hani'an laka al-jannah. Congratulations. You are attaining paradise because the Prophet is burying you. The Prophet is washing you. The Prophet is standing next to you, to your body. Hani'an laka al-jannah. The Prophet raised his head. He was inside the grave. He said, Ya Sa'd, la tuhattimi ala Allah al-jannah. Why you are too fast saying that he's going to go to paradise? She said, Ya Rasulullah, because you are burying him. He said to her, Ya Sa'd, لقد ضغطه القبر ضغطة التقت فيها عروقه. You don't see, but I see. When we put him in his grave, the grave squeezed him and he crushed his bones. He crushed his bones. They came to the Prophet, they said, Ya Rasulullah, why? The Prophet answered, because he mistreated his family. Mistreatment of the family. He had bad temper. He was yelling, screaming, angry, maybe at his mother, maybe at his father, maybe at his wife. I don't know. إن أكثر عذاب القبر من سوء خلق المرء مع أهله. This is a hadith. Most of the torture and the punishment inside the grave is a result of the mistreatment of a person with his family. When you mistreat your family, when you are angry at your mother, when you yell at your mother, at your father, at your wife, at your husband, at your son, at your daughter, at your brother, at your sister, we have to be prepared. And the best way to be prepared for that moment, as I said in the beginning, be careful of everything you do and everything you say. Be careful. Be careful. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would say, Allahumma khaffif ala Muhammadin sakarat al-maut. In his prayers, our noble Prophet, who hurt nobody in his life, who hurt nothing in his life, no one in his life was hurt by the Prophet. He would ask God during his sujood, prostration, during his prayers, Oh God, make it easy on me at the moment of death. Make it easy. Khaffif ala Muhammadin. Meditate on the Prophet, on Muhammad, the agony, the pain, the suffering of death. Khaffif. And we have to say this in our prayers. But not only with dua, with our behavior too. We have to change our behavior. If we have disrespected our parents, our family members in the past, today is the time to go and apologize. Apologize to them and make a vow. Make a vow with God that I'm going to be kind and nice and patient with my family members. I'm not going to disrespect my mother anymore, or my father, or my wife, or my husband, or my son, or my daughter. Now, let me conclude with this. The speech about death it has a beginning, but it does not have any end. It has a beginning, but it doesn't have any end. But I have to end it here by saying this conclusion. That if, because somebody asked me the other day, what do we do if we are seeing someone dying family member or friend, and you're next to him or her in the hospital, at home, in the street. If someone is dying, then they have to face the Qibla. It's recommended, mustahab, that you make the body facing the Qibla. If this is the Qibla in this direction, so that the dead person or the dying person has to face the Qibla. So if he sits, his face is towards the Qibla. His face is towards the Qibla. And then, if you can afford reciting Quran next to him or her, sit and recite the Quran and let them listen to the Quran. If the death gets closer to him or her, then remind them of the talqeen. Talqeen, to tell him not to forget to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah wa ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. Is to say to him or her, إِذَا جَاءَكَ الْمَلَكَانِ, when the two angels are going to come to your grave immediately after your burial. وَسَأَلَاكَ عن ربك وعن دينك وعن كتابك وعن نبيك وعن إمامك وعن قبلتك فلا تخف ولا تحزن. Do not panic, do not be overly worried, and say, keep your peace and your calm, and say, وَقُلْ فِي جَوَابِهِمَا اللَّهُ تَعَالَى رَبِّي. Remind him that the Lord, Allah is my Lord. وَمُحَمَّدٌ نَبِيِّي وَالْإِسْلَامُ دِينِي. Islam is my faith. And this book, the Holy Quran, is my book. And the Kaaba is my direction of the prayers. وَعَلِيٌّ إِمَامِي وَالْحَسَنُ إِمَامِي وَالْحُسَيْنُ إِمَامِي وَعَلِيُّ بْنُ الْحُسَيْنِ وَمُحَمَّدُ بْنُ عَلِي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والإمام المهدي. هؤلاء هم أئمتي وسادتي وقادتي، بهم أتولى ومن أعدائهم أتبرأ إلى الله يوم القيامة. Remind him, because at the time of death we forget. At the moment of death we forget. The first thing we lose is our memory. So keep reminding the dying person. Keep reminding him of these pledges, of these names. And then if he dies, then you may cover his or her head. And then after that, of course, the ghusl has 3 parts. And then the shrouding, the kafan, which has 3 pieces too. And then after the kafan, the hanut, they put in the 7 places of sujood, prostration. They put some of the camphor on the 7 places of prostration on his body. And then the burial. And it is highly recommended that people participate in the burial, in the procession. They go to the cemetery. زوروا المقابر فإنها تذكركم بالآخرة, the Prophet says. From time to time, go to this big museum called cemetery, because it is a good reminder. How do we crush our arrogance? How do we crush our arrogance? The best way, the fastest way of crushing our arrogance, our ego, is to go to the cemetery and look at the graves and see some of them died at the age of 20, 30, 40, very young. And we're going to have the same fate. So there is no point for me to be arrogant. No point for me to be arrogant. I'm going to have the same fate. فَإِنَّهَا تُذَكِّرُكُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ. Always remember the akhirah, my friends. Enjoy your dunya. Enjoy. I want you to enjoy your dunya. But in the back of your mind, be prepared for the akhirah. Because we have not been created for this. We pass. Nuh, at the time of his death, Jibreel came to visit him. So he asked him, Ya atwal al-anbiya'i umran, kayfa wajadta ad-dunya? You are the longest serving prophet that God created. He lived for 1600 years, 1600 years. He served, only his ministry lasted for 950 years. فَلَبِثَ فِي قَوْمِهِ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا 50 عَامًا. 950 years he was serving. So tell me, how did you find this life? How did you find it? He said, وَجَدْتُهَا كَدَارٍ لَهَا بَابَانٍ دَخَلْتُ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَخَرَجْتُ مِنَ الْآخَرِ. I found this life as a house that has two gates. I came from one gate and I passed through this life and I exited from the next gate. He said, I passed. He lived for 1600 years and he said, I transited, I passed through this life. He didn't say I stayed, he said I passed. Meaning life was too short. Too short. And you will see, my friends, you will see that life, as you get older and older, you would realize that this life is too short. It's not worth it to commit a sin. It's not worth it to disobey God. It's not worth it to miss some of your wajibat, some of your religious and moral obligations. It's not worth it to abuse any person, let alone your parents and your family members. It's not worth it. This life is too short. And after burial, my friends, the first night is a terrifying night. Therefore, the Prophet says, when you bury someone at the time of sunset, the first sunset after the burial, the first night after Maghrib prayers, offer 2 rak'ah of prayers. Offer the reward, the thawab, to the soul of the deceased. And this salat, this prayers is called Salatul Wahsha. Because the first night is a terrifying night, is a night of fear. Someone is being buried in this grave alone, and this is his first experience and first night. Every night his family is surrounded by family and friends. Tonight he's alone. وَارْحَمْ فِي ذَلِكَ الْبَيْتِ الْجَدِيدِ غُرْبَتِي. Imam Zain al-Abidin says, have mercy on me because I'm lonely. I'm going to be lonely. So offer 2 prayers, 2 rak'ah. One prayers that makes 2 rak'ah. In the first rak'ah, after Suratul Hamd, Fatihatul Kitab, recite Ayatul Kursi, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. In the second rak'ah, after Fatihatul Kitab, recite 10 times Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. And once you conclude, say Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wab'ath bithawabiha ila ruhi fulan ibn fulan. Say salawat and then say, oh God, I want you to send the reward of this prayers that I just performed for the soul. Mention his name and his father's name. It will bring him peace in his grave. And we need this peace. And we need people to remember us with their Fatiha, with their charity. I leave you here. Sorry if I made you sad. But sometimes we have to get sad. Sadness for the akhirah is useful. For the dunya is not useful. Don't get sad for something that you miss in this life. You miss money, you miss this house, this car, this person. Don't get sad for that. God is going to replace you. God is going to give you something maybe better. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ. But sadness for the akhirah is necessary. Because it makes us be prepared always for that final moment of departure when we ask Allah to bestow mercy and forgiveness on all of us, inshallah, at that moment. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.